Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today and having this conversation.
I'm so excited to be with you, Sarah. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. Well, I want to jump in. Tell our listeners about Hope House.
Yeah. So there's such a backstory, and I know we'll kind of get into that, but today we serve about 280 teenage moms and their little ones from throughout the Denver metro area. Our mission is to empower parenting teenage moms to become self-sufficient, and to understand how significant they are in God's sight. And we do that through kind of three primary programs. We have a kind of our overarching program called the Empower program that kind of covers over all of our educational programming. So high school and GED, college and career, financial literacy. We have a legal advocate who can help with legal matters. Lots and lots of just economic navigation is what we call it. So all things adulting, like I've never been inside of a bank. My family's never been inside of a bank. How do I open a checking account? And then also under that Empower program are all of the personal self-sufficiency, kind of growth work that we do. And those are the harder things, like healthy relationships, healthy boundaries. How do I set boundaries with parents who have addictions? Or how do I set boundaries with, my mom is constantly wanting me to pay her rent as soon as I have a job. How do I set boundaries with guys? How do I value myself? And a lot of that comes from spiritual growth and coming to a point where you start to see yourself as, like, we hope and pray our moms come to see themselves as we believe God sees them, which allows them to make choices differently than they did before that. And then our housing support program provides, we have a residential home. So it's a group setting. We can serve about 6 moms and their kids at a time. And then we'll serve another 150 moms with housing navigation. And that's everything from helping them find a partner program that provides housing, helping navigate a lease, navigate a landlord who maybe won't fix the bug problem. Maybe I don't even understand eviction or what that means and why that's not a good thing to have on my record. All the way up to home ownership, because we serve our moms until they turn 25, so it's a wide range. And then our third program is our early childhood education program. So we have a early learning program right here on site inside of our resource center where kiddos can do early learning for 3 hours while mom is on site doing any of those classes I talked about. And then we just opened a brand new early learning center, licensed childcare center, for up to 100 of the children of our teen moms and staff.
Wow. That is amazing. What a huge operation you got going. Yeah. But I know it didn't start huge. And I want to hear how why is this part of your story? Tell us about how this got introduced to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So also such a long story, but I grew up in a pretty chaotic household. My dad was an alcoholic and my parents were just fought a lot. And I spent a lot of time sort of protecting or feeling like I needed to protect and provide for my younger siblings in place of my parents as the oldest, which is very common among our teen moms. I got pregnant and got married when I was 17. So my husband and I have now been married for almost 40 years, which is crazy. I don't necessarily recommend getting married at 17. Lots of counseling. I was still in braces when we got married. He had the lovely 1980s mullet going on. It was pretty funny when I look at the pictures. But we got married and had our first son right after we turned 18. And then 2 more kiddos by the time we were 23. And then I started volunteering with teenage moms in a support group setting through through MOPS International, but it's now called MomCo. So they've rebranded MOPS to be MomCo, and I'm trying to get used to the branding. But yeah, so I was part of the very first MOPS group for teenage moms in Arvada, Colorado, called Teen MOPS, and just loved volunteering with those mamas, although I had grown up in a chaotic household. I did not grow up in generational poverty, and the moms we were working with then and now are really trying to break the cycle of generational poverty. And those moms were dealing with such hard barriers, everything from violence in their home, addiction in their home, hunger. Many of them had dropped out of school. Our typical age for dropping out is about 9th grade. All sorts of things that were just way beyond the scope of a support group and what we could kind of offer in a support group setting. And then very sadly, one of our mamas was killed by an ex-boyfriend in a domestic violence incident. And that was just like why isn't anybody doing anything about this? Like,
Right.
somebody should do something. And really it was like, well, what if that somebody is you? When
Yeah.
God kind of looks back at you and goes, yeah, somebody should do something.
Right. Which is so often, I feel like if we're saying somebody should do something about this, it often means we've got an
Yes.
opportunity, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So that was really the beginning was, my husband, so initially there were four couples that were part of that leadership group for the teen mops group, and fortunately I think it was very critical that the husbands were really engaged in the founding of Hope House. So the idea was, gosh, somebody should start a home for teenage moms. There's no such thing. We are still 23 years later the only residential program in Colorado, except for our affiliate down in Canyon City, that will serve a 16 or 17-year-old parenting mom. So we have maternity homes, although they are dwindling in number now, where you can go if you're pregnant and, trying to make a birth decision, but nowhere to go if you're 16 or 17, and already parenting. Except there are some residential treatment facilities that will accept a teenager who's parenting, but typically that's a court-ordered situation where mom is sent there through the court system, and there are a lot of behavioral and mental health issues typically involved there.
Mm-hmm. One of the first things that comes to mind is how do you deal with security? Because there's probably a lot of, you said there's some violence that they're getting away from and things like that.
Yeah. So our residential program is not technically a domestic violence shelter. So we don't, you can't be fleeing a domestic violence situation to stay in our residential program. We would have to refer you to another program, and different types of counseling if you're trying to flee a domestic violence situation. But I will say that a large portion of the moms we serve are dealing with some level of domestic violence, whether that's they're still living in a home where the parents are violent with one another, or they are living with a boyfriend who, maybe it's not, full-on violence to the extent of the mom we lost, but it's like really not a healthy or safe situation either. And they're so stuck between a rock and a hard place. So to just kind of describe like what housing looks like for one of our moms. So typically we'll have, let's say, a 17-year-old mom who's got a 6-month-old baby, and she tries to stay with the boyfriend, and that turns out to be like a really rough situation. They can't make it together. They're fighting a lot. Maybe he's a little bit violent. They move in with his mom. His mom's an alcoholic, so that lasts about 2 months, and then they get kicked out. She moves back in with her own mom with the baby, and her own mom's boyfriend says, I don't want this girl here. So she gets kicked out again. So she moves in with grandma. Well, grandma's on Section 8 and isn't supposed to have that many people living in her apartment. So she has to get kicked out of grandma's apartment. So this is the type of cycle that they go through. They just are continually moving from place to place to place to have a roof over their head, and occasionally being stuck in a really not safe situation. It's between that and literally homelessness. So they get stuck.
Okay, I want to go back to when you said somebody should do something about this.
Yeah.
And I know because I've heard your story. You did not feel equipped to do something about this.
Oh,
like, tell us
not only
tell us
not
about
feel equipped, I literally was not equipped. Like,
yeah.
Okay, so at this point in time, I'm like, I don't know, 32, and I have 3 kids who had all started school by this point. So I had all sorts of plans for my own life. I was ready to go to college. I wanted to be a teacher. I had all these things. And then God comes along and says, hey, I want you to think about opening a home for teen moms. So that was a huge, it was very exciting. I mean, I knew it was a calling. It made my heart leap. I knew it was something that I wanted to do and that he was calling me to do. But one, it meant giving up my own plans. It meant trusting that his plan was bigger and better than mine, which is easy to say and was really hard to do.
Yes.
And then 2, it meant trusting that he would actually show me how to do it, because my background consisted of working at JCPenney's and doing home daycare. Like, I still can't type. I type with 3 fingers really fast, but I still type with 3 fingers. I never went to college. That was one of my plans that never, that just went away. So I literally had no business starting a nonprofit. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have any experience doing it. People ask me my background and I'm like, well, it was God. That was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
God surrounds you with the most amazing people when he calls you to do something. It really is true that he will equip you if he calls you. And so part of the purpose of writing the book was just for people to hear and see, like, if you say yes, like, that's the hard part. The really hard part is the saying yes, because you're giving up all this other stuff, or you're not equipped, or you're scared, or whatever it might be. But when you say yes, that moment, like, God just starts moving and working in that moment, and bringing people around you to equip you to do what he's called you to do. And I literally got a college education probably 10 times over through all of the amazing mentors and businessmen and women that he sent around me, and faithful champions who have been a part of Hope House from the very beginning, many of them, and really helped us to take the steps we needed to take to make this happen.
Yeah. And I love that God works that way. And I see it so often in especially the stories that we tell and share on the podcast, is that it usually starts with saying yes and not knowing what that means.
Yeah.
And then having a couple friends that join you and say, yeah, I want to say yes to this too. And then God just equips you with really each step. And it's intentional. Like, he doesn't want to just say shabam and now you're totally equipped. Like, we still have to rely on him each step of the way. And the other thing that about your story that I think is so cool is, and this is also another thing that I'm finding, is the thing that we think is going to take us out of commission, that's going to sideline us from any meaningful ministry or whatever. Like, either we're ashamed of it, or it's something that we're not good at. It's something that we're, maybe embarrassed about. Those are the things that God often says, this is part of your equipment. This is part of the tool chest I'm giving you, is this story that you feel is so embarrassing. And sounds like that's your story too. Like, you probably thought, I can't do anything with this part of my story, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely becoming a teen mom is not, there's so much stigma and so much judgment and shame around teen parenting. And it's crazy how that hasn't changed from Mary, with Christ, all the way till today. Like, all through time and history, teen moms and becoming a mother as a teenager has been, at least in our culture, viewed with a lot of stigma and shame, and sort of now you're just going to be a statistic, and your kid's just going to be a statistic, and it's all over for you. And that is the farthest thing from the truth. So one, having experienced that myself, I definitely can relate to my teen moms, not just in terms of having kind of a similar family background, but just walking into a grocery store with a baby on your hip and people are looking at you funny, like, is that your kid sister, or are you the mom? And they're not even meaning to be mean. They're just like, whoa, you look really young,
Yeah, like, what's going on here?
Yeah, what's going on here? All the way to, like, taking your kiddo to the doctor. And, like, I took my kiddo to the doctor at 6 months for shots and got accused of child abuse, primarily because the doctor just didn't like me because I was a teen mom. And so she made up this whole story and called Child Protective Services, and they came and visited my house. And she had reported that my son had deep scratches on his back and possible neurological damage. I'm like, oh my gosh, totally not true. So they, get him out of his crib and check him over, and he's totally fine. And thank goodness he was, like, flirting with the CPS worker. But in that moment, you're like, holy cow, I have no agency over my own life. I have no agency over my own parenting. Like, she could take this child and walk out those doors, and I would have to prove I was a fit mother in order to get him back. Just because someone else didn't approve of me being as young as I was to be a mom. And so those types of experiences for our moms they bring out the mama bear in all of our staff. Like, cannot tell you how many times I've called a medical, administration, and kind of given someone an earful because they've treated one of our moms in that kind of a manner. But yeah, they're faced with some pretty significant challenges, and there's a lot of fear around. They don't necessarily seek intervention for, like, my child has got delays, or a speech delay or developmental delay, but I'm not going to raise my hand and say so, because someone's going to call CPS if I do.
Right.
So a lot of what we do comes in-house into Hope House. Our counselors and our therapists and our early intervention specialists for the kids come here because it's a safe and trusted space for the moms, and they know when they walk through the door that this is where they belong. This is their home, and they say that all the time. Hope House is our home. Hope House is our second home, and that's so critically important because you have to have a place that you can call home that feels safe and non-judgmental and loving, and also will hold you accountable because, there's grace and truth. So we're also holding you accountable to your goals to move forward. And we believe you can do that. We believe you can move forward. We believe that you have everything you need innately, and that God chose you to be the mom to your baby.
That is beautiful. One of the messages that we're all given as women, but especially in those unexpected pregnancies, is that your life is over. You've been sidelined now. Your dreams are gone, unless you make a different choice, right? Like the pro-abortion groups are like, you can't actually handle this, and this is why you need to abort your child. But which is such a condescending way to approach things, to say, oh, honey, you aren't strong enough, right? And one of the things that you said in your book that really stuck out to me was things that people need to know about teen moms is their grit. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Our moms are so strong and so determined and so brave. And literally, I always say, if you want to hire a good employee, hire a teen mom, because they are multitaskers. They're problem solvers. They're like, they can do 12 things at once. And they're usually doing them all on their own. Sometimes we actually have to tell them it's okay not to be strong, because you need time to just be able to sit with God and break down too. They hold themselves to an incredibly high standard, and they're so motivated to create a different future for their child than what they experienced. And that's what we draw on. So our secret sauce, we call our secret sauce our mommy motivation, in quotation marks, because their mommy motivation is what gets them out of bed. It's what pushes them to take an hour and a half bus ride here to Hope House to study, when they've been up half the night, and then, go to work in the afternoon, and then, take care of their, half the time they're taking care of other family members in the evening. So their plates are incredibly full, and they're juggling all of these things as a 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-old. And typically they're the one person in their family who everybody kind of looks to, which is also really hard. And I will say a little bit on the flip side of the your life is over piece, that honestly, if I had $1,000 for every teen mom who told me my baby saved my life, I would not need to fundraise. Like, just at our gala last week on Saturday night, the mama who was speaking shared her story of how this still just breaks my heart, but she shared her story of how her family, she had grown up in a home where mom and dad were both addicts. She was tossed back and forth between the two of them for 3 or 4 years. And then at third grade, mom left the family and just left and went to another state. So Ashlyn ends up, her dad's, the way she described it in her speech is that, I just wish I had a mommy like the other kids had a mommy that comb their hair and get them dressed and ready for school. And my dad was so heavy in his addiction that he couldn't do that. And so I was in so many schools, in and out of so many schools, I can't even remember the names of all of them. And by 5th grade, I was fighting and drinking, and had been to, already by 6th grade, been to juvenile detention. And she literally said, my whole family talks down on me and says, you're going to grow up to be a prostitute or a teen mom and a nothing.
Oh,
and that still breaks my heart.
Yeah.
To tell a child you're going to grow up to be a nothing. And she said in her speech, I did grow up to be a teen mom, but I didn't grow up to be any of those other things. And having my son saved my life, because my son taught me that I have value too, and I'm worth having a good life. And my son is worth having a good life. And it was so powerful to hear her, little 5'2", tiny little thing, 21 years old now, telling her story, and so bravely. So I guess when I say they have grit and they have courage and they have bravery, it's not just that they have those things around becoming a teen mom. It's what they've overcome in their past and in their childhood, and how that having that baby becomes such a turning point of, I won't do this for I will do differently for my child. I want something different for my child. I'm desperate to do something different for my child. They just can't do it all by themselves. They need somebody to come alongside.
Right. Which then probably mostly women at Hope House, right?
Yeah, although we have for the last 3 or 4 years, we've really been intentional about trying to hire some gentlemen, because we really need our moms to see healthy men, and understand that there are good men, and that you can raise a son to be a good man, and that you should expect to have good men in your life. That's what God designed for you. But literally, if you've never seen something or experienced something, it's really, really hard to do it or to believe that it might be true. So one of our volunteer coordinators, a man, and he just had a baby a year ago. For the first 3 months after they come back to work, they can bring their baby with them. And I remember Madeline, one of our moms, saying, "Oh my gosh, I love watching Chris with his baby girl. I didn't know that daddies could be like that." And it was like, oh, yes, daddies can be like that. That's how daddies are supposed to be. So that's the kind of daddy you should be looking for your kiddos.
Yeah. And it's that life on life demonstration of, walking this way and mentoring and loving and guiding them. Were there women along the way for you who did that, who kind of modeled, this is what it looks like to be a good mom, to be a good wife, to be a godly woman? Like, you have anybody that sticks out?
Yeah, for sure. My mother-in-law has always been that person in my life that, I was 17 years old and didn't have any friends. And so she had her friends give me a baby shower. And so,
that's so sweet.
She taught me how to celebrate my kids. She taught me what healthy marriage looks like, what healthy parenting looks like. She and my father-in-law have been an incredible role model to me and to my husband. And she really modeled faith for me, and was the one to tell me when I was 19 years old and very lonely and had a 2-year-old son. She's like, "You got to go to MOPS." And I'm like, I am not going to MOPS and walking into a room full of women who all did it right, and I'm going to be the one who they're going to be judging. And she's like, "No, you got to go." And I loved her so much, and I had to respect that she wanted me to go. So I tried it. And oh man, I was so glad I did, because they didn't treat me like that at all. They welcomed me in. They loved me just like any other mom. Gave me an opportunity to be a leader at a really young age. I got to co-lead the children's program and learned so much from that. And eventually out of MOPS came Hope House. So really it's kind of a beautiful full circle story. That she came to know Jesus through MOPS herself, and then sent me. And even though I had grown up knowing who Jesus was, I didn't have a deep relationship until I joined MOPS. And heard other women praying out loud, and it was a whole new experience of faith for me.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Okay, so there have been time and time again, God has provided at just the right moment for Hope House as it's grown along in these years. What is a story? I mean, we could talk the rest of the podcast about all these different stories of God providing, but does one stick out in particular you could share with us?
Yes, so many miracles. I say that the other reason I wrote the book was that people need to know that God still does miracles today, like in your own life, in your own backyard, not just like overseas or in Bible times. So the most craziest miracle story of all was so we started out we were renting this brick ranch home from some folks who were going to have the home demolished when they developed the property and built townhomes. They ended up deciding to give us the house if we would pick it up and move it off their property. Well, we had nowhere to take this
that
house.
Sounds like a big deal.
Okay. And we had no money. I mean, at that point, we were literally waiting for what I called miracles in the mailbox just to pay payroll. Like somebody would send us a $5,000 check totally unexpectedly, and phew, we can make payroll. Well, we get offered this, this house. We get a $100,000 loan on the top half of a ranch house because the basement was going to get plowed under. And we think we're rich. $100,000. We're going to go find some land to move this house to. We find a house mover who costs $40,000. So there goes almost half of it. Oh, no. And he tells us, because he was the only not nice person in the story, he tells us that you can only move this house 7 miles. And I'm like, okay, we're so naive. We just believed him. You can only move it 7 miles. It turns out he didn't want to get a permit to cart the thing down Sheridan, which is a state highway. So we believed him. We're out looking, can't find anything. And finally, I get a call from the realtor, and she says, "There's nowhere for you to go. There's nowhere to take this house." And I get mad at God. And this is my story: me and God arguing with each other. Me arguing, God shaking his head and saying, "Girl, we're gonna talk when you get up here someday."
Yeah.
So here I am yelling at God, like, "What? Why would you give us a house and no land to put it on?" I go to work the next day and I get a phone call from the pastor of a church down the street, like literally 5 blocks down and 1 block over. I've never met the guy. We have a elderly woman from his church who is bringing us laundry soap, so she knows the story, knows what's going on. He calls me and says, "Hey, are you the people looking for land?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, we have some we want to give you." I'm like, "You what? Who are you again? What are you talking about?" So my program director at the time, Robin, she and I get in the car. We drive 5 blocks down, 1 block over. Here's this guy, gets out of his car, literally looks like Santa Claus. I'm not even kidding. Like round belly, white beard, the red nose, all of it. And he's like, "Hey, I'm Pastor Monty." And we're standing in front of this like 2-acre field. And he's like, "We just want to give you some of our land, whatever you need to get started and have, your house and your playground and whatever you need. And I'm going to go to lunch." And he gets in his car and he leaves. And we're like, what is happening right now? So, of course, it gets more complicated when the deacons get involved and the city. And so we're like, okay, we got to actually subdivide like 1/3 of an acre from their property. So Robin and I go to the city planner and we're like, "Hey, how do you subdivide this little piece so we can put our house on it?" Easy, no, right? No problem.
Yeah.
She just like looks at us like you're nuts. She's like, "Okay, you're going to have to rezone the property. It'll take a year. You have 2 months to move that thing before they break ground at the townhome project. It's not going to happen." So I'm standing there at the counter arguing with God and like, "Why would you give us a house and land and now we can't even make it work?" And Robin very quietly says, "Would you just mind looking to see what zoning it is?" Because we had to have an R4 zoning for like a group residential program. So she rolls her eyes, goes over to this big, huge lateral file cabinet, pulls out this big old plat map, and down in the corner, big green stamp, R4.
No
Well,
way.
it turns out that church 25 years prior had zoned just 1/3 of an acre for a maternity home and had never put any ministry on it. And so for 25 years it had sat there waiting for Hope House. And God knew from the beginning, like before I was ever a teen mom, he knew what he was going to do through that church on that land in the lives of the teen moms to come down the road. And for me, it was like, whoa, like when you say God knows the beginning from the end, that's what he means. I know the beginning from the end, and I knew what I was going to do there. And it was just waiting. And it was just a complete miracle.
That's incredible. And the pastor probably didn't even know that it was zoned that way. Huh?
He didn't. I don't even know if there were very many people left in the church who knew that they had zoned that for a maternity home all those years prior.
Ugh, that is beautiful. Okay. Well, what are you learning in this season of your life about God?
Oh, gosh. That's such an interesting question. So as you grow, and we've grown so much as an organization, we're, a lot different than we were. It started out pretty small, mom and pop, and now we're a pretty big organization with about a $5 million budget, and we're just in the beginning stages of building out an affiliate network. So we have one affiliate in Northern Colorado, one in Canyon City, and just about to launch one in North Carolina. So we're just beginning to move outside of the state of Colorado. So what happens is, as you get older and more mature and you've learned a lot and, God has helped you be successful, it's easy to start relying on your own power again a little bit. Like, I know how to do this now. I've been doing this a really long time. And it's easy to kind of step back and go, yeah, I got this. And so it's a constant thing between me and God to remind myself of, this was never mine to begin with. And people say that all the time. "Oh, Hope House is your baby." I hate when people say Hope House is your baby.
Oh, no.
Because it can't be my baby, right? Like,
right.
It has to be God's. This is just something I've been given the privilege to do. And it's easy to say that. Trust me, there are definitely times when I'm like all about, like, I've got all my hands in the ownership and I have to make it about me. But it's a constant, like, giving it back and going, this is yours. And it's not about me. It's about your moms, these kids that you love and adore so much. And sometimes that's a really big comfort because I rely on the fact that he loves those girls too much to let me screw this up. Like he will move me
yes,
before he will let me screw this up. So
yes.
that I rely on that. But yeah, I think this is probably a season where it's like, wow, we're about to take another leap into the unknown. And as frightening as it is to be like, okay, we're going to take this, we're going to teach others in other places how to do this so it doesn't take them 20 years to figure out how to help their teen moms in their community. We're kind of going back to the beginning a little bit and having to rely on God in all new ways again. And that part's really exciting because watching him move and do his thing is such a tremendous privilege.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Well, how can people get involved or donate, learn what to pray for, how to point us in the right direction for that?
Always prayer first. Oh, thank you for mentioning that. I totally believe that our prayer warriors go before us and like make the path for us with their prayers. So prayer for Hope House is we appreciate that more than we can even say. But you can find us on our website, hopehousecolorado.org, O-R-G, Hope House Colorado, all spelled out. And if you're local, there are tons of opportunities to volunteer, to get engaged in many different ways. If you're not local, certainly we're always praying and waiting on God's provision. There are ways to donate, on the website. But if you're out there somewhere and you're like, gosh, my heart beats for teen moms. I want to be someone who can step in and be in the gap and come alongside her and help her to build that life she wants to build. Connect with us through our website. Just email us. There's an email address. You can just email info@hopehousecolorado.org. And just let us know you're interested and we'll connect with you and see how we can help you to help your moms in your neighborhood.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got the 3 places in Colorado, right? 3?
Yeah. Yep.
And then you're opening one in North Carolina. And I know I will get questions if I don't ask this. Where in North Carolina?
So it will likely be in the Raleigh area. Okay. We're just not quite sure where in Raleigh. And it's just always such a God thing. So we had 2 different employees who both moved to North Carolina about 7 years ago. One of them was a teenage mom herself. And, for the last 5 years has been she's been the executive director of an organization that does housing for, folks coming out of incarceration. And she just felt like God said, hey, I want you to open a Hope House in North Carolina, in Raleigh. Wow. And so she left her role to open a Hope House there in Raleigh area. So we're actually headed out there next month to meet with some donors, and hopefully folks can be definitely praying for Sarah and teen moms in Raleigh, because we're going to need some funders to come around her to make her vision a dream, a reality. And each of our affiliates has their own nonprofit status, so they have their own board and do their own fundraising. We're helping with the beginning stages of that, but any funds that we receive stay local here to the mamas we serve at Hope House Colorado.
That sounds like a good way to do things. Okay, thanks for telling us about all that. Okay, I gotta hear. Tell me a story that stands out to you of one of the moms that's gone through your programs.
I love that question. I just spent some time with Catherine, one of our alumni. So we serve our moms between 15 and 25. So being an alumni means she's now almost in I think she's 31 now. So Catherine came to us. Oh my goodness. She grew up in a home where both parents were addicts. They struggled with their mental health, and they also struggled with housing. When she was 9 years old, she was living in a 1-car unheated garage in the middle of winter. And she remembers running away from that garage wearing only her Barbie nightgown, because her parents were fighting, and getting picked up by the police 10 blocks from the garage. So by the time she was 13, she was in and out of foster care. She was fighting at school. She'd gotten arrested for kicking a police officer. And then she got pregnant at 17. And she was so sick that she ended up dropping out of school and just gave up on her education. And then when Olivia was born, she just had this huge heart shift. And some friend told her about Hope House, and she's like, I have to do something. I have to build a better life for Olivia. So she came to us, pretty defensive and nervous, but determined as all get out, joined every class, parenting class, healthy relationships class, budgeting, joined a Bible study, all the things. And as she kind of built deeper relationship with our staff and volunteers, her heart really began to heal, and she began to see herself differently as she grew in her faith, started making different choices. And now today she is married to a great guy. They are both believers, have a healthy home church. They are homeowners. They have 4 kids, including Olivia, who are all thriving. And the best thing is she has a job as a housing support specialist in Boulder County, helping low-income families find a place to call home.
Wow. So that's part of her story too. Just like with your story, how God used those early years to form that in you. That same thing with her. What an amazing story. And I'm sure you have hundreds of similar stories where these girls have just, their lives have changed.
Yeah.
Thanks so be to God for the work that he's doing through you, through the other people that are working alongside you, and through all that Hope House has to offer. Wow. 2 more questions for you. What books are you reading?
Well, my book club right now is reading a book about Eugene Peterson, the author of The Message Bible Study. And it's an autobiography or a biography that was, I'm trying to think who it was written by, but it's been fascinating to learn about him and how his whole desire was to see faith lived out in a real way. And it so connects to him wanting to write The Message, because he really wanted the Bible to be real to people, and he wanted to see faith in reality, not in theology. And I was like, oh, that's so fascinating to me. So yeah, I'm enjoying that book.
Okay, that's a good one. Okay, last question. What woman from history would you like to have coffee with?
I wish I could meet Eleanor Roosevelt. I can't even 100% remember why, but I chose her as a character in 5th grade that you had to dress up and do like a history paper,
Right.
And I chose Eleanor Roosevelt, and I just remember getting to wear my grandma's big, wide-brimmed hat with a feather on it, and she must have been so fancy, and and thinking, gosh, she was like the wife of the President of the United States. And I've never even actually read a book about her. I don't know a ton about her life, but for some reason that stuck with me, so I probably should read something about her now.
So you just want to be fancy is what I'm hearing.
I want to be fancy and go to tea with Eleanor Roosevelt.
Yes, that would be so great. And then you could learn all about her, because you could just ask about her.
Exactly, I can ask her. Maybe when I get to heaven.
That's so funny. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for coming on with me today.
Thank you. It has been such a pleasure to meet you, and thank you to all of your listeners for all that they do.
Yeah. Thank you, listeners. I'll see you next week.